One of the questions that I get most often is I've just started a new job in customer service or customer experience. I'm leading a new team. What do I do? Well, my friend Jeremy Watkin is in that boat right now. He's probably, I guess, a couple of months into it. He's the director of customer experience and support at Number Barn. He's also the author of one of my favorite blogs, Customer Service Life. And he's going to answer that question for us. So, Jeremy, you just started recently. What do you do?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, Jeff. And yeah, a little bit about my background. I have a lot of years in operations, running customer support teams, being a part of customer support teams. And I kind of took a hiatus where I was kind of doing this like marketing, quality assurance kind of thing, helping customer service teams, talking to customer service teams, but not actually doing the work. And I've just come back into a role where I am running a customer support operation again, and had to really sit down and think about what my plan was going to be going into the role. I have to admit that, as hard as customer support work is, I've actually really enjoyed interacting with frontline customers again. And so I think that was one of my number one priorities, was to actually go through at least a decent chunk of the onboarding of that a normal customer service representative would go through. Going through the customer service training, spending time interacting with customers. I told you offline that I've already done a fair share of tickets and responses to customers. I've called a handful of them. But it really helps to get your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the customer experience. What are the pain points and challenges that my team members that I'm managing are going through? So that's a great place to start. And I think it's not always the obvious place to start for some folks.
Well, and I want to ask you a little bit about that because one of the things that I've seen, or a couple of the challenges I've seen with that, one is I'll see leaders start a role and they'll be committed to, I'm going to go through the orientation, and then 2 days into it, an executive calls them in and says, there's a fire, you need to go put it out. Stop with the orientation business and go put out the fire. The second issue is I imagine there's things that you observe while you're going through the process and you're thinking, no, this cannot be. How do you overcome the temptation to put the brakes on that process and respect that process and really wait until you fully understand the big picture before you start trying to make changes?
Well, I do think that is a huge challenge. That's a great question. It does start with taking a lot of notes, and I think I wouldn't say I'm like the best planner on the face of the planet. I definitely get sucked into the reactive nature of customer support on the day in and day out. But
okay, so you're human then. We're going to get that out on the table. You're human.
Yeah, you bark loud enough and you'll get my attention. But so I really went into those first 30 days or so, taking just a ton of notes and trying to prioritize the high level things that I thought needed to be improved. And I think one thing that helped, we actually use Zendesk, and part of my job before coming to this was advising clients at an outsourcer on how to use Zendesk, but I had never actually used it myself. So it's been fun to like actually get my hands on the tool a little bit. But so that was kind of a focal point at times where it was like, all right, I know a bunch of best practices for using this tool just from talking to lots of clients in the past about it. It also helps, I will say, that like with a tool like that and technology, a lot of this stuff costs money. So you can't just I can't just start saying, hey, I need $10 here, I need $100 here. So that kind of helped me, I would say, prioritize some of these things. Like there are a billion tools that I would love. There are a lot of, free things that I would love too, but that just require a better process or whatnot. But when there's a cost associated with it, it really helped me to like actually write it down, try and think about the business case or the ROI for using it, how it would help make our team more efficient, maybe reduce ticket volume, things like that. So I think that helped me not just like make everything top priority right away and start just making changes.
Yeah, one of the things that about I think spending that I've always been sensitive to is that we often will look at, well, some new technology is going to solve all my problems, and as someone who's very people focused and very technology agnostic, I often look at the opposite end of the spectrum, which is, well, are you using the tools that you have already, and are you optimizing them? Like you mentioned Zendesk. I was working with a client that had Zendesk, and they were barely scratching the surface of what that tool is capable of. And once they just made a few adjustments to optimize it, it became so much better. And so I think you make a strong point about putting the brakes on, just let's get new technology, not only because of costs, but maybe what you're using already works. Did you find some of those things where the tools that people had just weren't being optimized?
Yeah, I think this is kind of maybe a little tangent, but a great example. Obviously, I'm passionate about quality assurance. I've spent a lot of time doing that. And one of the things that the business owners, we're not a giant company, the business owners said when I was interviewed, they were like, I think we've hired a great team, but we feel like they're probably relying on canned responses a little too much and not achieving our mission of making meaningful connections with our customers. So I went the real low budget route, and it's over my shoulder. I have one of your books. I actually have all your books. I'm like your biggest fan, but from the Service Culture Handbook, really starting with a customer service vision and establishing that, and out of that vision, that I'm saying the free solution, but for anybody listening, I hired Jeff Toyster once to assess my team, and it was well worth the money. Um, and you're just a great guy. Sorry. I think I'm geeking out too much. Anyway.
I didn't mean this to turn into a commercial, Jeremy.
So,
focus on you, buddy.
So out of that, I spent time with our team, and this is all free stuff, other than, the time and it takes us to work on this. But I spent time with the team determining what are the key behaviors that we want to see out of each interaction with a customer. And we really came up with about 8, and that became our quality process. And as much as I would love a really nice quality assurance tool, we are accomplishing it all through Google Forms and Sheets right now. And just getting in the habit of reviewing interactions, making sure that our team is doing the behaviors that will achieve our vision and mission as a company, and then having really rich coaching conversations with them. And this is stuff I didn't do in the past, that now that I see how it's helping us achieve our vision of making these meaningful connections with our customers, it has a lot more meaning. And for those of you who have done quality assurance, it's not the most exciting work, but when you realize that it's helping you achieve a better customer experience, it takes on a whole lot more meaning.
So for those of you who are listening in, I think one of the things that Jeremy's talking about is what I would call a customer experience or customer service vision, which is a shared definition of an outstanding experience that gets everybody on the same page. And when I'm asked by people who are starting a new role as a leader, what should I do? That is the number one thing that I advise people to start with. So Jeremy, I'm so glad that you made that a starting point for you and your team. Can you share what was the vision that you all came up with?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. So they actually had one pre-existing.
Okay.
And it's I'm going to mess it up, but it's basically because we sell phone numbers and phone service, and we said behind every phone number is a beautiful person, idea, or vision. I think I'm messing up that last word. And we strive to make those meaningful connections every day. And I just loved it. Like, we're selling phone numbers, and it's really hard to get excited about porting phone numbers in and out from carriers. But when you realize that there's a human being behind it, it makes all the difference. And so, everything we're doing is trying to make meaningful connections. So, if we're
I think, by the way, Jeremy, I think the shorthand is, I've heard you say this several times already, make meaningful connections. I think that's the short version of your
yeah,
vision. If you're tuning in, the memorizing a statement's not the key. Understanding the statement and the sentiment behind it is. And so if you just listen to Jeremy talk, even rewind this interview a little bit, make meaningful connections, Jeremy. I think you said that at least 3 times. So that's clear that that's the vision.
yeah, absolutely.
I like that it's loaded too, because it's a phone number. That's the connection. But then we're connecting with the person behind the phone number, which I think is awesome. The other thing, though, that I want to get to is there's always a question of buy-in. I've got a new team. How do I get them to buy in? And something that I think you did, which is really smart, is getting the team to participate in deciding what a great call or a great contact looks like. What was that experience like in terms of getting people to take ownership of the results they're expected to achieve?
Well, I think some of it is a really easy sell, to be honest. I don't measure first contact resolution, but I absolutely love the sentiment behind it. When you talk about, I would say for our quality form, the things that stand out the most would be making a connection with that customer, um, you know, maintaining security, making sure that we do not compromise on the important things like that, and then providing correct information. It's not hard to prove that if you can provide a customer with an accurate response, if you can empower them so that they don't have to respond back more times than necessary. Sometimes they're going to have to send more information, but the customer is going to be nicer. Um, our volume is actually going to go down because there's just going to be less back and forth, and we've actually seen that already. And then if you make connections, like, customers are nicer and they're more pleasant to deal with. It's not always the case. Sometimes we have to load extra empathy in a response, but it is rewarding. And we've seen little bumps in customer satisfaction so far. So I think that's the big sell. And then I think my other thing, and I probably end up doing a little bit too much frontline work when I do this, but by being a leader who leads by example, somebody who what is it? Eats my own dog food, I guess. Practices what he preaches, I guess. I've been a leader who didn't practice what he preached, and everybody knew, oh, that's just Jeremy. That customer probably had it coming to him, or there's. I haven't been the model always in my life, and but they do. They read the emails that I send to customers, and they absolutely will take a cue from that, and probably even more so if I'm not doing the stuff that I'm asking them to do when I respond, and being emotionally intelligent and empathetic and not sounding like a robot. They're probably not going to do it either. So so I think there's some opportunity to inspire them, to help them connect the dots, that this isn't just an email they're sending, that it's actually a person they're connecting with.
One of the challenges that new leaders, I think, frequently face is credibility, buy-in. Involving your team is a good move. And even though, like you said, we were talking offline about how many tickets you're personally answering as a leader, there's a balance to be had. You can't be the leader and tickets cleared, right? That's not going to help, because you have to lead. But there is something to be said about people seeing you do the work, seeing you model the behaviors. And I know this has been a long time ago for me, when I managed a contact center or when I managed a training team. I made very sure that my team saw me setting an example and could hear me on phone calls, could see my emails, just like you're doing. I,
Hmm.
I think that generates an incredible amount of buy-in. Now, the one thing I want to come back to is something that a quote from you. I'm going to botch it, but you probably remember saying this because I think this is something you say a lot, which is no employee in the history of employees has declined to open up and answer your questions if they believe that your intentions are good, that you're there to help. In other words, when you go ask your employees what's working, what's not, they talk to you. And I think a lot of leaders worry about that. Did I get your quote right? Is that true?
Yeah, I think I say it differently every time, so I think
Okay.
you were well within the bounds. Um, and that, that reminded me of something, Jeff, that uh, coming to work for we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but as a new CX leader, the owners of the business were like, we recognize that, we're still kind of in startup phase, and there are a lot of opportunities where we could create tools or get the right tools to help our team be more efficient, help alleviate some pain points, silly manual processes that should be automated, things like that. So they were like, we have some development resources that if you can come up with a list of priorities of tools that we can create or add to our system to help the team, we will prioritize those. So that was great to be able to come in as a new leader and sit down with the members on the team and say, what are your pain points? What do you really wish we could either take off your plate or make it a lot easier to do? And out of that, I got feature requests that customers keep asking for. I got tools that they need. I got just, process things that they're like, this process is silly and it's not customer focused. We should revisit it. Um, and you're correct. If you sit down and ask them, even the most introverted customer support rep, I mean, ask them via email if you need to, but if you come at them um, with no threat of judging them for what they say, and just let them talk about how they feel about their role, how it could improve, they're going to have things to say. They will always have things to say, and they may not be able to back it up completely with data, but they're talking to customers all day, every day, so they have their finger on the pulse of what those frustrating things are. And it's been a lot of fun to actually address some of those things right out of the gate. I know it's not. I know we have other projects to work on, but you do what you can, and you let them know that you're advocating for them every step of the way.
Jeremy, we're getting a little short on time, and I want to make sure I ask you this one very quick question as we wrap up. You said at the very beginning that you had a plan when you came in, and I think that's key. You got to start with a plan, even if it goes haywire. You have to start with a plan. Can you share just at a high level, like what was like the number one priority in that plan as you were starting your new role?
I would, well, I guess my number one plan was to come up with a plan. But I think it really is, it encompasses let's understand what the voice of the customer is, what customers are saying. So we have a CSAT survey, we have unstructured data in our tickets. So a lot of deep dives in doing that, a lot of dives in looking at key metrics, whether it's agent performance or ticket drivers, things like that. I'm still, I think the biggest metrics that I really always come back to are productivity and quality. How can we optimize them without, how can we don't want to drive productivity so much that quality goes down, and vice versa. So what's that balance? I'm still seeking that. And then, take, don't devalue the importance of building relationships with the team, because that's going to pay off in the long run. So I think those were kind of my big things. And, we just hired a couple of people, so working through some of that. And Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on my list that I'm chipping away at, but I hope that helped answer the question.
It is, and I call it the infinite list because you get something off the list, you're going to add two more things. It's just how they
Yeah.
go. Jeremy, you're one of the most visible customer service and customer experience professionals out there. Uh, I personally read your blog and enjoy it quite a bit. How do they find you? How do they find your blog?
Yeah, so customerservicelife.com is the blog. I do a lot of different things on Twitter. So follow me on Twitter at JT Watkin, from tweet chats to Slack groups to whatever else. There's a lot of stuff. LinkedIn's always great too. And read Jeff's blog too while you're at it, because I like his too.
Awesome. Jeremy, thanks so much for your time. You share a lot of wisdom, and good luck in your new role.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.